It says recording.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is the author of A Curious Year in the Great Vivarium Experiment. Based on a journey he took after his mother passed away without a plan, a guidebook, and having only enough money to travel for 3 or 4 months, he bought a one-way ticket to India. Using a daily gratitude and intention writing exercise, 15 months later, he returned home with more money than he left with, had traveled all over Southeast Asia, volunteered for India's most important environmental lawyer, worked as a school photographer's assistant in China and Vietnam, lived in Berlin for 3 months, and had countless encounters with the magical, the mystical, and the transcendent. On the surface, A Curious Year in the Great Vivarium Experiment is a story about a man in his mid-30s coming to terms with the death of his parents. Beneath the facade, however, it's a multi-layered literary novel in 3 parts: spirit, body, mind, about an artist searching for his voice, a writer searching for his story, and the power of gratitude and intention to create a reality. Welcome to the show, Tim Shields.
Thank you. That sounds pretty cool. I kind of want to read that book.
Yeah, man, I'm intrigued. You know, we got linked up by a mutual friend, and I got to look at your story, and I was like, okay, this guy's great. Like, I got to get him on. I gotta know how this travel went and more about you, man. So I'm excited to dive in.
Well, it's an honor to chat with you. Seeing all the list of guests you've had on your show, so I'm
Thanks.
excited to be here.
I'll say this is like a draft pick. I don't think people know who you are exactly yet, but this is going to be like, yes. This is like the LeBron James draft pick. Like, you're coming, dude.
Yeah. Or Russell Wilson, he's pretty good too. He came out of nowhere.
Definitely. So do you want to start with a little bit about like just your background and who you are so I can get up to speed, and then we'll dive into the book and all the amazing stuff that happened over the year and just anywhere else we want to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to be a writer since I was like 17, and didn't quite know how to do that or get there. I mean, I was always keeping a journal, and I think now I have probably 52 journals of my life on paper starting September 29th, 1991. So I could go back. You could be like, tell me what you did June 7th, 1996. And I'd be like, psh, psh, psh. Oh, wow. Well, I won't tell you what I did that day, but so yeah, I just kind of had for many years had been drifting through marketing and advertising gigs, and was always trying to make corporate America work for me. I was like, this job's going to really do it. But it just either spit me out or I spit myself out. And I guess in like 2006, I always knew that if you wanted to write about interesting things, you had to have interesting experiences. And in 2006, I had a job and a relationship end in the same week. And I was like, oh, maybe life's trying to tell me something. So I had this connection to this woman who owned an orphanage in Tanzania. And I took off and I volunteered at an orphanage in Tanzania for 2 months. So that was kind of my first trip as like an adult. And I wanted to be of service. And, it was an extraordinary what's the word? Anyway, it was an extraordinary establishment. I don't know, I'm blanking on the word, but I knew the place was special, and I almost got the opportunity to ghostwrite this woman's story, but her main benefactor fancied herself a writer, and she's like, no, I'm going to write it. But of course, that story has never been told. However, in a book, but a decade later, 60 Minutes discovered it. I knew that, like, that's how special a place it is. So, around probably my mother passed away in 2010, which I can't call it the inspiration for this story, but it was the inciting incident. And my parents had been sick for kind of a decade. I like to call myself a martini baby. My dad was actually in World War II. My dad was the 3rd day in Normandy in World War II. That's a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star, which are 2 things he got.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I got some cool stories about that. But, my dad passed away, I think, in 2004. My mom passed away in 2010. And I was living in Seattle, grew up in New Jersey, and I got passed up for 2 jobs in the World Trade Center in May 2001. If I'm a cat, I've got about 4 or 5 lives left. So I got passed up and I was like, what am I doing in New York? This is like insane living. And I just kind of actually I was talking to my brother on the phone, and at the time I always had these like interesting living situations, buildings and stuff, but I was living with like a 6-year-old manic depressive landlady and 2 Israeli guys in this like, huge pre-war brownstone on the Upper West Side. And I had this little tiny room that I could only pace 2 sides around my queen size bed. And I was talking to my brother, like freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to make money? And he's like, you don't have to live in New York to make money. And I was like, holy, like, paradigm shift. And in like 1 minute, I was like, where do I have friends? Oh, Ben's in Seattle. I'm going to move to Seattle. So I've been in Seattle for 17 years. And yeah, when my mom finally passed away, instead of, I had been going home, like my vacations were going home to visit my older parents. So I was kind of like, well, this is my time. This is what I've always known I needed to do. Because there's this thing inside of me that I need to express, and I need, a vehicle for it. And for some reason, I always kind of knew like travel would be it. Like in high school, reading like Joyce, Beck, Steinbeck, and Kerouac and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that's kind of life I want to live, freedom, have these incredible experiences. And so I bought a one-way ticket to India, and I didn't have a clue. And when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that was insane. Because I arrived, for some reason I had a Lonely Planet Nepal, which doesn't really do you any good when you land in New Delhi. And
no.
And like the first 2 days, I was like, what have I done? I've made a huge mistake. I was like just in this hotel room. I can't call it a hotel. It was a room. And I was just like, what am I trying to prove? Why did I do this? I just left like a pretty good life behind in Seattle. And then quickly things very quickly things unfolded. My sister had a roommate from Boston, an Indian woman, like 20 years prior. And she's like, you should try and find Pari on Facebook. So I found Pari, and I was like, I know that when you take a big leap like this, it's a cool experience to volunteer first, because you can orient yourself in a place and you can sort of learn about the culture and meet people. And those people in turn can sort of, direct you in which ways to go. So this woman, Pari, was like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I'll do anything. I have no idea. And she's like, well, I know this guy who has an eco ashram. Would you be interested in volunteering there? And I'm like, sure. I have no idea what the hell an eco ashram is, but I'm not above sweeping floors or whatever I need to do. And as it turns out, this guy is like India's most important environmental lawyer, who's like sued the state of India over the course of 20 years to create a green zone around the Taj Mahal. He had 1,200 industries removed from around the Taj Mahal because all the industries were pitting the marble yellow. And, there were like slaughterhouses around there too. So there'd be like a bird of prey dropping innards on like tourists and stuff like that. So his argument was that the cultural heritage of India is not worth the short-term gains of industry. So, wow. Over the course of 20 years, he sued the state of India, and he's the only person to win. And he had 1,200 industries removed. And at some point there was 20,000 people like burning his image in effigy, and like he had to have security for 24 hours for like 2 years and stuff like that. So yeah, I got to volunteer for him, and I spent my first 3 months in India, and everything kind of unfolded from there.
Holy smokes.
That's how the story starts, at least anyway.
That's how the story begins. Holy smokes. So I love that. Well, you had the catalyst, and I'm sorry to hear about your parents. It's always terrible. I think like for me, it's just like a catalyst. A lot of people will be Definitely. Going through their life and they feel like they want to do something. And I love the beginning of just like that paradigm shifting thought. It's like, it is possible to make money in a different city in the USA. Like your brain is like, bing, like, no kidding. I
know.
What is it?
I mean, at that point in my life, I was, I guess it was like my first real job, I was working for barnesandnoble.com, and everyone was super young. I was like 25 maybe, going out like 4 or 5 nights a week. Money went to like partying and rent, and then if you had a little money left over, you could eat every once in a while. And it was just like, woo, I'm never leaving New York. This is amazing. And then all of a sudden it catches up to you and you're like, this is insane. What am I doing? This is like no way to live life. So I don't know. I just, I'm more drawn to the West Coast than the East Coast. I don't like to tempt fate, but so I'll never say never. I'll never do that, because then life is like right up the, you know what. So yeah, I just, well, now I'm talking to you from San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. So when I came here for 3 months to finish this book, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, I kind of had when I was down here, I met this woman, and we had this on again, off again relationship, long distance relationship, and I've been kind of editing books for other people, like helping write and edit books. That happened in November 2016. So I'm just about to finish my second book for somebody, and Seattle's like so different now than when I got there. It's a total tech city, and it's a hustle, and you know, I've moved out of the career and I'm in the calling, which is kind of what I'm living in my fourth book right now. But so the third book is kind of about the journey of the artist and, you know, moving into the calling. But yeah, I mean, I'm just living a kind of a chill life down here right now, and I have a community down here of Americans and Mexicans that are super cool. And as soon as they finish this other book, I'm going to start working on my second one. So,
well,
yeah.
I'm glad that you found like the chill zone. I like to kind of get out of the big city too. I grew up near Toronto, and it was just a little bit too busy for me. It's a great city, and there's lots of great stuff in great cities. I just need space. I'm like a miniature Sasquatch, you know. I just want like a little cabin in the woods and some relaxing space. And I will enter the city when I have to, but it's not my preferred habitat. But I really like what you said about moving out of your career and into your calling. What do you think the best way to approach this is? Like, do you want to talk about some of the experiences in the book, or like, it sounds like you've gone even beyond that book and you're into these new modes. So I'm just curious if you want to share some of the travels and some of the things that you had that were most important. And I know that some of the ghostwriting you do from our preamble is like pretty impressive ghostwriting and helping with some influential people. And that is around like manifesting in our reality, you know, creating a reality, moving into a calling, like having that all in moment. And, you know, when you went to India and you're like, what am I doing with myself? But you've kind of got to cut cords a lot of time, right? You got to let go of that old paradigm to experience something else, and then have this greater understanding of having experience of faith and spirit and the mystical. It's kind of like you can't have both sides on one end of the river and know what the other side's like.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of kind of the book is me sort of going back to this 17-year-old self. So I will say that I fictionalized it. So there's a character in there whose name is Thomas. It's a very big stretch from Tim. And that's a whole other sidebar. But when I was, you know, it's about the dream of the 17-year-old and my 17-year-old self. But I think, you know, it relates to everybody. And I kind of said, you know, I decided I wanted to be a writer then or earlier. And I kind of said it was like the power of this dream, like shot a grappling hook out from the present 17-year-old self into the future. And, you know, that is an intention. And I think a lot of people lose that intention because, let's face it, adult life is very busy and confusing, and a lot of things, a lot of tasks and making a living and all this stuff. So for a lot of years, I was zigzagging my way, you know, but always with I had no idea how it was going to happen. And I mean, there were times where I was like super depressed. I was like, you know, sometimes I didn't even like want to go back. I didn't even want to go on. I was just like, this is never going to happen. I'm strapped with debt. I mean, I'm stuck in a corporate world. How do I get there? And so there's that thing, and then I'll go back again to the 17-year-old self. I only remembered this a couple years ago, and when I remembered it, things started to unfold pretty quickly. But I used to like pray or ask when I was 17, like the prayer of St. Francis. I would be like, make me an instrument of your peace, like use me as a voice piece for good or whatever. And then life got busy and I kind of forgot about that. And then a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago, I was like, oh my God, I used to always like think that and, and pray for that. And, I wound up going to, Dr. Joe Dispenza's, one of his workshops in 2010. And then I kind of was on and off with that for a bunch of years and then really committed, and he teaches about meditation, the quantum field and consciousness, creation, intention. So I really kind of committed to that in about 2015. I went to one of his advanced workshops, and for like 4 days, I'll just say in 2013, I got back from this 15-month journey. And I started working on the book, and I was like, this is so bad. And I just put it aside for a while, and then I'd pick it up. So I went to Dr. Joe's workshop, and for 4 days, I just meditated on like, I need the right conditions to show up for me to be able to bring this book to fruition. And one of the things was that I need a full-time job because, I freelanced for most of my career, and it's like start, stop, and the energy stops. You disconnect from that, then you have to chase this paper thing we were talking about called money. Literally the moment I arrived back from this workshop, I got a LinkedIn message from a friend, and he was like, hey man, I just left Microsoft after 10 years to go to this startup. It's supposed to be like the next Uber unicorn company or something. And I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. So I take the train back in from the airport, and I get into town, and then I run into this dude on the street corner, and I'm like, oh, this is starting to get more interesting. So I wound up getting this job, and for every day, it lasted for only 6 months. And every day I went to a coffee shop before work to work on this terrible draft. So I'd go 30 minutes, an hour and a half to work on the book. And it took exactly 6 months to get through this draft. And as soon as I finished that draft, I got laid off. But I was in such an amazing space. I'm like, all right, what incredible thing's about to happen? And literally within 5 minutes, I get a text from one of the people that I write for. And he was like, hey, what would you think about helping me edit my blog? And I was like, this is amazing, because it was a dream opportunity to work with this guy. So I got laid off, and then I reached out to this other company that was courting me at the time. And they had already filled the position, but then they were like, what if we created a position for you? And I was like, all right, we can work with this. So it took like 3 or 4 weeks for them to work out the paperwork and create the position. And then when I got the job offer, I was like, so what would you think if I started in like 5 weeks? And they were like, all right, we waited long enough. I'm like, score. So I took off to South Africa for like 2 weeks. And then I went up like skiing in Whistler, and it was an epic winter. I went to another Dr. Joe workshop. And I thought I would be at that job for probably, I don't know, I thought I would be there right now. And about 9 months into that job, the person who I was editing for asked me to help him with his book. And I was like, watch how fast I quit my 9 to 5. So I think that was kind of the stepping off point for me to jump into my calling. And it is the fruition of my 17-year-old ask as well, to like use me as a voice piece. I mean, granted, I want to just write my own stuff, but I've been so fortunate to work with these two people who I have learned so much from about consciousness and energy and creation. And so, yeah, I mean, it's happened. It all starts everything starts in the mind, as you know. The mind is the builder. I guess one other thing I can just kind of add, which is a structural element of the book and something I've done every day since. After my mom died, I thought if you have a sick parent, you sort of, the word is not fantasize, but you imagine what the experience is going to be like when they actually die. And I mean, I thought I was ready, but it totally rocked my world. I mean, I was kind of a mama's boy. You know, I was the youngest by 9 years, and out of a family of 4. And I said in the book, it's like when a parent dies, it's like a tornado or a tsunami sweeps through your life. And no matter how hard you try to rebuild, something intangible is lost forever. And I felt so super lost. And a friend of my sister, this woman name is Sheila Bath. She's kind of an energy, energy healer type person. And she's like, okay, you're a writer. Yeah. Okay. I want you to do 5 things. I want you to do this exercise. Every day, I want you to write down 5 things you're grateful for and 5 things you want to create. She said, you're going to find that what you create today is what you're going to be grateful for in the future. And I was like, sure, I'll try anything at this point. So I went to a drugstore. I bought a little $2 notebook, and I started creating my future, which, I mean, at the time I wasn't working, and I was like, all right, I need the right job for right now. I surrender money. I surrender whatever. I just want a cool team. I want freedom. And I wound up getting this job. And at first it was a 3-month contract, and then they extended it to 6 months. And actually the guy, like a designer there, became one of my closest friends, and he wound up doing the cover, which I loved, to the book. But at the end of 6 months, my boss was like, hey, would you be interested in working like 10 to 20 hours a week while you're in India? And I was like, hell yeah, I would. Cause that's, US money in India. Plus I was, volunteering and living for free a lot. So I was actually making money on that part of the journey. So then after 3 months in India, I came back to the States because I had miles and I wanted to surprise my family for a family reunion. So I came through Seattle for like 4 days, and I went to the office for like 4 days, and my boss like pulled me aside. He's like, hey man, you're going to need money to travel. Bill me for 30 hours a week for the last 3 months of your contract. So I was like, what? So I went back to Asia to work with a friend of mine who has this niche business as a school photographer. And he was paying me $500 a week, free room, booze, board, like staying at, business hotels. And I'm just like a backpacker, and I'm collecting 2 incomes while I'm, taking off into Asia. So it was just like, and everything like has come out of my gratitude and intention journal. And it's a powerful exercise. I recommend it for everybody.
Wow. Holy smokes. Well, it's interesting because the basic elements you're referring to completely align with what I learned with studying. I spent the summer, I told you a little bit about at the beginning, with a Native American elder of the Mi'kmaq.
Yeah.
And he is the Sajin, which is seer and hearer of spirit. And so when he goes to, his communities and tribes, everybody knows who he is. And, he's like the spiritual guy. He's like the Dalai Lama of like, that section. And one of the things that he taught me was very firm about was you got to write it down. He's like, spirit doesn't know what you're thinking. You have spiritual free will here. So he's like, when you stay quiet, he's like, that's all great and well and good and stuff, but it doesn't know what you're thinking. So it's interesting. You said like the turning point was remembering that you're praying. He's like, you have to either say it out loud or write it down, and ideally do both. And now they can assist you from this higher level to begin to orchestrate things. But if you don't do that, you don't know what you want. And then on top of that, you're working with the consciousness, right? It's just like, what is the practice? And Dr. Joe's work, he's not the first guy to say it, but he's one of the new pioneers of saying, hey, you influence your reality through visualization. Essentially, it goes deeper than that in some worlds. And, you've got as far as like yogis in India and even in North America, everywhere people are having these mystical experiences through, whether it's meditation, whether it's some sort of yogic practice, whether it's through breathing, whether it's just through daily life and doing acts of kindness. You can have a mystical experience. But the idea is to like, the way that I explained it to someone the other day is like, your mind is like a bowling ball, and you have these thoughts, and they're like honey. And every time you have a thought like, oh, you're not good enough, the honey sticks on there, or somebody calls you a loser, or you go about the day, this honey gets stuck to the bowling ball, but you don't know how to wipe it off. You attach to all these things. And so automatically you have this emotional reaction, rather than having this separation of like, oh, you're a loser. Hold on. Yes, that hurts a little bit. Let me wipe off the honey for a second. Okay, cool. Like, I don't have to just let that thought take me down a slide of I'm a worthless piece of crap and like I'm not good enough, which is kind of what
I know
happens.
That voice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. When you're writing a book, yeah, of course, you're probably
Like,
the worst to yourself.
yeah.
Well, what I wanted to ask, because I know you've done a lot of travel, you kind of like, I'm aware that you're bridging both worlds. Part of it is like, understanding manifestation and spirituality and taking all in and having these mystical experiences type of deal. And then the other side is like, what you learned from the traveling in those experiences, going all in. So I'm just curious, like, if I just give you that, if you can give me some feedback on either like some of your favorite travel experiences and what you learned from them, or you could dive into like the process. Cause I think that those processes are literally, that's like the foundation. If you want strength, it's not that complicated. You need to do squats, you need to do deadlift, you need to do bench press, you need to do pull-ups or dips or both. That's it. You can do other stuff and it works, but that's like the core foundation of strength. And you go into like snatches and Olympic lifts and crap like that. But there's a protocol. If you want endurance, run every single day. It's not complicated. So by making sure and ensuring you're doing the most important baseline things, you're going to get an experience and a result from that. And then you can refine it as you move along.
Yeah. I'll just go backwards for a second. It's funny because as I was walking through town today, I had just been listening to your podcast with that elder, and he said you have to speak it out loud. So I was like, I had these things in, so kind of like maybe people thought I was just on a phone conversation, but I was like speaking out loud while walking down the street, like the next things I want to intend. And something that I learned a very, very, very hard way, is that you have to be, and you were saying this, or the elder was saying this, but you have to be very intentional and very clear about what you want. Because if it's sort of a soft, muddy vision, it can come in a soft, muddy, or with a thunderclap. And I'll just give you one example. Like when I came back after traveling, I was like, all right, I'm going to become a grown-up. I got a full-time job, and I finally got my own place that I was like buying my own like grown-up furniture. And I was like, wow, this is what I've been looking for the past 18 years since I left home, to create my own home. And I had been writing in like my, my gratitude intention journal. I was like, I want a windfall of money. I want my sister to visit me. I want, a spiritual experience that takes me deeper into whatever. And what happens on April 1st, 2013, but my house burns down. And so that might be something to do with book 2. But, it's like my sister showed up the next day. I got a windfall of money. I got an insurance check. And, it was kind of amazing in that like these people reached out from all over the world who I had met and traveling, and people sent me shoes, and like somebody worked at Adidas and they sent me all these like shoes and stuff. And so one thing I have learned about like creation, gratitude, intention, and creation is to be very clear. So now if I write something like, I want a windfall of money, I say, and it comes with grace and ease, So, I mean, I can't say that I sort of know or am a master at it. I am just, when I was younger, I used to be so sort of like wrapped into my mind and trying to figure out the meaning of life and my purpose and all that stuff. And, kind of something that I wrote about in the book is like, my character, learn that I don't need to know the meaning. I only need to participate in the mystery. So, and part of that participation is, I think we are on this 3D, 4D dimensional plane. We exist for consciousness or the unified field or spirit to experience itself in physicality. So we really kind of are the writers of our own script and our own screenplay. And I think a lot of us, there's a couple mosquitoes going on here. I think a lot of us are living our lives unconsciously, and we all have these unconscious programs that are like wounds from childhood and stuff. I mean, I'm trying to tackle a couple right now. So really the first step is to become aware of these unconscious programs, because that's what we're living and that's what we're creating. So no matter whether we are aware of it or not, we are creating at all times. So I think the first step is to become aware of those negative thought programs, and to just try and be more conscious and creative out of the day. And I mean, the gratitude and intention journal is a great thing. I started this thing this past winter called the Being Experiment, which you can join the group on Facebook or something. It was a private group at first, but I had like a month of partying and excessive food, just like the holidays. And the girl who I was doing the long distance thing with had come, and we left on a rocky state. And I was like, okay, I need to change my entire being. So I quit alcohol, sugar, and caffeine, like cold turkey. And I did it like for almost a month, but the sugar, which was actually the hardest part because sugar is in literally everything, I quit for 21 days. So kind of actually the second day I was like, my life is meaningless. It's like my sister's like, you're detoxing from sugar. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is terrible. Everything's falling apart. But towards the end of the second week, I started to feel really clear. And I did a 21-day cleanse once before, and the same thing started happening. And I wasn't going out. I was just meditating twice a day. And one time in meditation, it was like, this idea came in. I was like, okay, I should write down these elevated, emotional words, and I'm going to put them in a bowl, and I'm going to pick a word every day, and I'm going to try and embody that word, because if I am embodying that energy, then that energy should be reflected back to me. So I started doing that, and my nephew, who is an incredible musician, he actually scored if you go to my website at curiousear.com, he scored the book trailer, which was all shot in India. And he was like, wait, what is this? And I'm like, I'm just going to do this exercise. He's like, I want in. I'm like, all right, let me figure it out. So I went to a coffee shop that Saturday, kind of figured out, organized this thing. And then I was like, what the hell? All my friends probably think I'm like woo-woo anyway. So I'm just going to send this out to 50 people and see how they feel about it. 25 responded that they were stoked. So I called it the Being Experiment, and I just sent it out. And then people started, sharing it. And so basically, like, I do it every day. Like today, my word is grateful. And I just write it on my hand. And just as a reminder all the time, oh, okay, I have to be grateful, pull me into the present moment. And then another thing I do is I put a little heart on my hand, because I live so much in my head, and I'm trying to be more in my heart every day. So I don't even know where that was going. We just kind of rambled there, but.
That was awesome, man. You said a lot of great things, and I was I want to give feedback on most of those, because I think they were really to the point. And I hope as I say it, because there's one thing that I'm trying to remember I wanted to comment on, because it was all really good. But the first thing that came up was like being aware of what you're being run on, the unconscious programs. And so when I studied Law of Attraction with Michael Lozier, who wrote a brilliant book on it based on NLP, it's like you're either creating by default. It's like you're not participating in the mystery. You're just creating by default, and whatever comes in, and that's just what it is. Or you're creating deliberately. And then in that creation of like deliberate creation, you also got to surrender to like what is. It takes a minute to move, right? So if you can find, I think the real mastery is if you can find contentment and peace with wherever you are in the process, wherever you are, with putting in like thinking and intention and emotion into creating on purpose. Right? With non-attachment. Now you're really in a powerful process, and people aren't aware of the unconscious programs that they have, and you got to kind of like elicit those, like, what are your beliefs around, just like your simple one back in the day in New York is it's like, okay, what are my beliefs around money? It's like, I can only make money in New York. I'm like, oh my God, I could make money in like a different city, And so, and you might want feedback, get some help or something, explore on your own or whatever. But that's a huge thing, is to create on purpose. And I like what you're talking about. This is what I want to ask actually. When we're creating specifically, so when I was studying with the elder, and I've heard different things on this, but the elder was like, I was like, okay, how do you talk to spirit, right? He's like, well, how do you order at a restaurant? He's like, you ask for specifically what you want. If you ask for food, they can give you any food that's on the menu. They might give you cake when you want a hamburger. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And I remember when I was studying the law of attraction and things like that, the one idea is like to be vague, like in your prayer, let me be a vessel for the highest good, right? So that's like vague, and that's, but that leaves more option for a higher intelligence to do its work. So
exactly.
in your process, and this is like a personal thought for me, I've been curious about the being very specific and very, leaving it to the universe and that higher intelligence. So an example would be, okay, I want to go snowboarding again this season, I think, right? But I don't know how magical the universe is. I want to be of the highest good. That's my number one intention, is like, I want to grow and understand and to be aligned with spirit. I word it differently, and it's good to write it down, because you realize how you can get clearer and clearer. But I want to be aligned with spirit and have the biggest impact, while also developing my own spiritual knowing practices and alignment while having fun. And right now my idea is snowboarding, and I could say I want to snowboard in Whistler, and this is the house that I'm in. Or I could say I could maybe I get like hooked up in Switzerland with like a baller pad with somebody who's working on something changing the world, right? And so what do you recommend for me or someone, right? Because then if I say it's got to be in Whistler, then I miss out on Switzerland or Japan or something, because my brain can only kind of navigate keeping me alive. That's what it's basically designed to do. Don't die, Matt, and do the tasks that I've set for myself for the day, as there's massive other pictures happening in the background.
Yeah, I'm kind of going through a little bit of that right now, like because I'm sort of in this transitional phase, as in I'm like so far out in the unknown, like I don't even know. I'm like in Mexico. Yeah, I'm in Mexico to begin with. I'm doing sort of this new relationship thing, even though she's still 3 hours away. And, I don't know what I'm going to do for money next. There are little projects that come in, and, I'm going to do some websites, and somebody wants me to edit a book. But I'm like, do I want the big fish, or do I want the 3-book deal from this? I have to get really clear on that. But one thing that I've been kind of doing is like, I just focus on, like, in my meditation, like, I want to feel abundant in San Miguel. Like, I don't want to worry about money. I want to go in and I want to buy a round of mezcals for 10 people or something like that. And like, I don't want I just want like joy and abundance and creativity. And this is already kind of happening. So I think, I don't know, I'm going to leave it to a higher intelligence, because anytime I've tried to, write the script, once I finally rip up the script, something way more interesting shows up. So there's definitely a fine line between asking for specific things and then letting this higher intelligence organize the things for that highest good. But it's just, the process is just like create, surrender, trust, and like in, always in my meditations, I've found that in the beginning, I use in the book, like every couple of chapters, there are these 5 gratitude intentions, so people can kind of get an idea what it is. And really, that is what created my story, just writing these things and then letting the universe let the cards fall where they may. But like I said, in the beginning, I used to kind of write more material things, and I mean, it's now and then I started just moving to, like, I want experiences that bring me more joy, more expansion, more abundance. And that's when it gets really interesting. I mean, yeah, I can't say I've cracked a code. I'm just participating in this mystery. So, and hopefully for the highest good of myself and others, which is the very important part for others, which is actually kind of something that I learned from this, from the Indian, the lawyer that I volunteered for. He was such a man of service. But anyway,
well,
I digress.
That's good. Well, definitely touch on that. Shoot, I can't remember. Man, I was going to add a comment to that. Now I forget it. But talk about the guy from India, and then I'll come back to what I was going to comment there.
Well, he was just this amazing, like simple, humble man, but I mean, an animal in the court. And it's a very different legal system there. He it's not like he was this super rich lawyer. He did his private practice to support all of his cases for like the voiceless people of India and for the environment. I mean, he was super committed to the environment. And I just got to hang out with this guy, and I met this American scientist there who had also won a Golden Prize, which is like the equivalent of the equivalent of like a Nobel Prize for grassroots environmentalism. And this American scientist was like, "This is the most important lawyer in India since Gandhi." And I wrote in my gratitude intention journal before I took off, I want to be of service. And like I land like this guy, I get to hang out with this guy who's like the most important lawyer, environmental lawyer, whose entire life is about service. And I would have been super intimidated by him if I just met him in a more formal setting, but I just got to hang out with him and laugh all the time. And he just told me all these like kind of incredible stories. Like at one point, the Supreme Court of India held a special case for him every Friday about environmental issues. It's like insane. And I guess like one thing that was really impressionable upon me was, I kind of looked up to him as this huge figure. And when you see somebody who has this incredibly accomplished life, you're like, what did you do when you took those forks in the road? And he's like, he was just like, he relied on his faith and his commitment to service and his principles. And he's like, it wasn't easy. I was scared to make these decisions too, but you have to make decisions in your life. So I was like, all right, that's pretty damn good advice.
Man, that is some like core meat and potatoes living right there.
Yeah.
Like, you look at someone like you said, if you'd see him, you'd be like a daunting figure. You'd be like, whoa, you're impressive, but everybody has to do that. I think you have to rely on your faith, commitment to service, and what are your principles? What are your values? So I think like just that alone, if we could just sit and marinate on that sucker, because we know what they are, like identify what they are for yourself, but committing to doing them when, I can't imagine what it'd be like in India at that level, but I imagine there would be pressure and it would be challenging and it would be scary. And you'd have to stand up, but how would you know you have this higher thing working for you? You have to like do the thing. It's the easy thing to play small and bend your principles and things like that. That's easy. Right. And so that's going to build the character of who you are. And I imagine that this person was pretty humble as well. And the comment I was going to make too is like, two things. One, if you're doing an affirmation, one of the kind of things that I learned around that is you could say, or better. I want to go snowboarding in Whistler with incredible people while doing the podcast, or better. And I'm open to you hooking me up in the most aligned way, but these are the elements I want. I want it to be snowboarding. I want there to be good people. I want to have abundance of money, so put all those elements that are necessary, right? And get as specific as you can, and then allow the universe can be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, if we jumble up all these elements that you gave us, let's just do that in Japan for you, or Switzerland, or whatever the case is. Amazing people.
Now you're talking.
And you're going to impact humanity. And the other big thing I think that you're touching on is the service. I want to be of service. And I think that as far as consciousness goes, you can only get to a certain level of consciousness being selfish, being self-centered. But that's when true, you are thinking about what you can give, and that's what business is giving. Back in the day, somebody's the leather guy, somebody makes the metal, somebody does your electrical engineering, somebody builds your house. You're giving something that they need. And so what is like your offer? What is it? How can you improve people's lives? And if you don't know yet, just start thinking about things that you like, and putting a little bit of energy into that bucket. But like, how can I help? And if you're thinking about how you can help, and it doesn't need to be this grand thing. You don't need to be a New York Times bestselling author. You don't need to be the world's best snowboarder. You don't need to be whatever. You can contribute in your community on a daily basis. But the idea is, you're going to design a life that you're enjoying, and you're going to start to influence what's happening more, and you're going to grow spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and learn. And that learning and that example is really going to impact the people around you. And that's enough. It could be your mom. It could be your sister. It could be your friends. It could be, people you grew up with. Who knows? You don't know that. But ultimately, that as you kind of, navigate in this mystery of like whatever the heck's going on, to choose your own adventure times infinity, you're a little bit more stoked on what's going on, and you're connecting now with this mysterious force that's becoming more and more real because you're noticing it and you're experiencing it directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, I just, yeah, totally. I just remembered something. I didn't include this scientist guy that I met in the book, but he had gone undercover on like a whaling ship or a dolphin ship that was like killing all these things, and he like videotaped it. He exposed this whole thing. But so he won like a Goldman Prize for that. But one of the things he told me, see if I can get this right, but it was essentially like, figure out something that you're really fucking pissed off in the world about and do something about it. As opposed to like, you know, it's like the other side of the pendulum, you know, it's like, I thought that was really great advice. Kind of wish I put that in the book, but next one.
Well, it sounds like you have a few more coming out. Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, as process of trying to find your purpose is like, what are things that bug you in the world? And we forget, I think, how powerful we are to make a difference. You know, like if you don't think you make a difference, go volunteer at a homeless shelter and give somebody, you know, if you see like, go look around, see where you can help. If you don't think you can make a difference, go volunteer someone. If you weren't there, they wouldn't be getting that thing. You can make a difference. And I love that. I don't know if it's Marianne Williamson, but it's like somebody's talking about you're not afraid of like how small you are. You're afraid of like your infinite power and what you're actually capable of. And I love that idea. But what I think a caveat is now where I am at this point in time is it takes a sacrifice. It's scary. Nobody gets a free pass. I don't care where you are financially, emotionally, with family, wherever you are, you have nothing, you have everything. Whatever you're going to have to risk to go get that thing that matters to you will be a leap, right? It's like we're all jumping off a 50-foot cliff and like, we're all scared, you know, maybe if you're a cliff jumper, you're not, but nobody gets that free pass. And that's how you identify people living in it's a different reality set. And it's just like, ooh, like what is, like you're still in it now. You've already done the travel. You've learned this. You've written a book. You're an author. You know, you're studying with brilliant minds. You're all set. No, you're still in it. And you still got to like mysteriously figure out what it is next. How do I do the next thing? But you've kind of like jumped before, so you have an idea of what it's kind of like, you know?
Yeah, it's those jumps still aren't easy. Like up until you step over that thing, I'm always just like, what am I doing? You know, like it's crazy. What was I going to say right there about? There was something I wanted to say. I'll get back to it, but. Yeah, there's so many in between spaces of our lives, and you're like suspended in this state of anxiety because you're like ready to move on from whatever that was, and you're ready for the next thing, but you're just like, what is it? Actually, I kind of remember, you know, I often sort of find myself thinking like, should I just be getting like padding a 401k or something? You know, like it seems like such an easier life, you know? And then like 2 nights ago or something, I have this friend down here. He just goes by Zolox, and he is like the embodiment of an artist. Like everything he does is just like expression, and he's an incredible painter and photographer. And you know, I was like yesterday or the day before, I'm like, is this what I should be doing at 44 years old? I'm like living in this little tiny, you know, apartment, if you can call it that, in this, you know, in this artist district of San Miguel de Allende. But then I was just like, the conversations that this guy and I have, you know, are just mind blowing. So we're talking about starting our own podcast because there's so many interesting, unique people that come from all over the world, especially artists. This town is like Disneyland for artists. And like I just want to have a conversation with the guy who owns this incredible like cafe, like vinyl cafe that I just found. Like you just go there and like choose the record and he'll play it for you. I'm like, you know, we had this bonding, you know, this bonding music conversation. I was like, oh, okay, this guy and I are going to be friends. And but yeah, but then last night I just like, we went out to dinner, and then I went up to like my apartment, and I came down. He's got his little like artist studio down there, and I'm just like watching him move in between canvases. I'm like, this is pretty cool. This is kind of like the life I always wanted to live. Like, I want to be immersed in art, and I want to be immersed in the mystery. And my role, I think, is to articulate it in a way that everybody can sort of feel or understand. It's been a pretty incredible experience, because for years I've fantasized about how people would consume my book. And, I wanted them to be like, I wanted it to like keep them up at night, or like on an airplane. I want people like to have like an hour, 3 hours to get into it. And I keep getting that feedback. And, they're like, oh my God, I was crying in this part, I was laughing in this part. And, I've always said, like, I want people to like think, feel, and act. That's what I want out of what I'm bringing into the world as a writer. So, I'm just, every day I'm learning more and more about the power of the mind. It doesn't mean I'm great at it, because I definitely still have these things that I'm struggling with. But I think, like, I've kind of been calling, it was originally a trilogy, but as I said, now I'm living in the fourth book, but I was calling it like the consciousness trilogy. So this first one is kind of about overcoming the self, which is, which fear and self-doubt and all of those voices that keep us moving into the full expression. And then the second one is kind of about the awakening that consciousness is actually the organizing principle of matter, not the other way around. And then the third one is like the journey of the calling or whatever. But yeah.
Man, well, you said so much there. You have to elaborate on all of those things. And you just drop 3 like super deep concepts and like, oh, well, there's that, and let's move on. But
I didn't even get to the fourth one. But you got to lead me to the well. You got to lead me to the well.
What's the fourth one?
Yeah, the fourth one.
I need to know, man. This one.
Yeah, the fourth one that I'm living in now is about an initiation, the initiation. And it's being initiated into greater degrees of love. And, I thought it was about this relationship kind of that I'm in, and about loving relationship, but I'm really learning that it's about a deeper level of love with myself. And I realize that, to be with this person, I have to love myself in new ways and deeper ways than I ever have before, because I realized, she kind of told me this at one point, but you don't hear things until you're ready to hear them. But it was like, I have a story where it's like I was looking for evidence why this relationship wasn't going to work, or like why, really essentially, to be completely honest, it was like looking for evidence why I'm not lovable, which is like, it sounds so ridiculous, but that, because there's lots of evidence in the external world, right? I have tons of friends all over the world, but it's the inner love, and which is what the first book is about. But now I'm experiencing it on a completely different level. So it's just like, life is just, when you're doing the inner work, it's just a series of labyrinths. It's like, woohoo, I just got through this door, and then you're like, fuck, there's 4 more doors. Which way am I supposed to go now? Like.
Yeah, so. I find that it fractals too, and that's where that humility comes in, with people that I've, I like to seek the masters and see what they're at, and they have this level of humility, because it's like, you look at what it is and that you don't know anything. You're like, oh my God, this is way beyond me. It's never going to end. And I have some control of this. I have some influence, but definitely not the big part. You know what I mean? It's like you're this little tiny boat on like a huge, massive ocean that's like 100,000 times the size of ours. Is like, you got no chance. But as you begin to go through these doorways, you are participating. And I think it's like this, like I said, choose your own adventure. But I also think you can't make a wrong choice. I think that it's either living in default and knowing whether you're just like in this thing and people are telling you, or it's just like you have this voice, which is you saying, hey, man, remember that time you liked skateboarding? Remember that time you liked art? Remember that time you're really passionate about botany or some crap, or, or electronics or video or stuff that you enjoy? Remember that stuff? Well, hey, somebody convinced you along somewhere that you're not good enough and that you can't have fun here. That's not true. You can have fun on this. You can figure out, you could work at a coffee shop. You could work the worst job that you could possibly imagine for like 4 hours a day that pays the bills and do the thing you love most the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Huh? And then you'd be more stoked.
No. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think I
Mm-hmm.
want to add one more thing, but I would think that like when you move into the passion and what you enjoy, that's like your highest service. That's you clicking into the bigger picture, right? If you're not doing the thing, like if you enjoy it, that's your fit. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's kind of like, every element of the forest is doing its thing. You know what I mean? The bees are doing their thing, the leaves, the flowers, everything is kind of serving a purpose and they're being themselves. And I kind of think that's how the universe works. And you're like the main character in your avatar. You're the main driver. So you're just finding contrast in things that you like. So you're like, oh, I tried this. I didn't really like it, but I learned that I love this. I thought I liked scuba diving, but in fact, I love surfing. But you're on the water and you started with water. I know I like water, right? And it begins to refine. And then all of a sudden, after you surf and you do these things or you do art or whatever, 10 years later, 15 years later, you're educating like a bunch of kids or something, and you're changing their lives, teaching them about life through this element that you enjoyed, or in your example, teaching people about life through exploration of story. But you're lit up doing story. So when you eat it and you die, and you're like, the mirror comes up and you're like, okay, man, good job. Like you didn't act out of fear. You act out of like passion and love and service. And it's a little bit more of an empowering space to be in.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's safe to say that when I finally, I don't know if it was so much as I stepped into it, or maybe I was ready to step into it, or maybe I just had to wait for the conditions to align to allow me to step into my calling as a writer. I mean, I've been working on it as a craft since I was 17 years old. But once I stepped into it, things started to unfold in a very sort of magical and mystical way. And I will say about the mystical thing, I when I was going to these meditation workshops, I would hear about people having these incredible internal mystical experiences. In the beginning, I was beating myself up because I was like, this is bullshit. What am I doing wrong? Like, I don't get this, And then I realized at some point, like, I don't need to have those internal experiences. I need to do the work, but I don't need to have those external experiences, because actually mystical experiences happen in my external world, the way things link up and the way people show up at the right time. And I think that is just increasing your awareness, because when you increase your awareness, you're obviously going to see you're not living so myopically or something. And, there are little things in your peripheral like, oh, wow, if I wasn't of this state of mind or of this elevated state of consciousness in this moment, I might not have noticed this little thing in my peripheral, which guided me to all these other things. There was something that you said earlier in that, and I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about this. She has a very different path than I do. I've kind of been sort of the gallivanting bachelor, like traveling the world and doing this thing, and she was in a marriage for a very long time. But you come to these forks in the road, right? And you can choose left or right, and they're two different experiences. But I don't think you can necessarily make a wrong choice, because they're actually all leading back to the same lesson that you need to learn. It's just a different variety of experiences, external experiences and interactions that's leading you to this internal lesson that you need to learn. So I'm trying to live in that awareness, but easier said than done, right?
Totally. And I 100% agree. Yeah. You can't make a wrong choice. I think that it's an understanding of like living in default or living on purpose, and then starting to realize, sometimes people will call it an awakening or an insight or like a perspective. And then as you kind of get to the other side and you start living more on purpose, it might take a year. It's a process. It's like before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You're doing the same thing. Exactly. It's just a little bit different. Same, but different. And I
Exactly.
really, and I like how you talked about, the magic of, well, I'm just kind of framing it this way, but like magic of reality as it is, like that is the mystical experience, literally just paying attention to anything that is actually happening. It's like,
Yeah.
if you pay attention and you think about it, it's so incredibly magical. And, I like to kind of, give the idea like this is the state of consciousness that you've been looking for. Just literally
Yeah.
paying attention to what is going on in Zen. When they're like, what's enlightenment? And he just whacks you with something, to just say, hey, it's like here and now. But then the mind kicks
Yeah.
in, and then all of this stuff happens. And I think that in the culture today, we are a little bit lost in the mystical experiences. Like I was looking and trying to do, like I did like everything from a teen. I was meditating for martial arts as a kid, but I was like, okay, lucid dreaming, astral projection, law of attraction, consciousness, just anything to leave my body to go to a different state.
Maybe some mushrooms here or there, something like
Yeah,
that.
I've done,
I mean, that was me.
Yeah, totally. Mushrooms, ayahuasca, all of that stuff. You know what I mean? I
Exactly.
like to
Yeah.
explore. And I think that from doing all that, I have had mystical, unexplainable experiences. But I do think culturally, people are like seeking that carrot at the end of the stick, and they're missing the
Yeah.
entire point that if and when an experience like that happens, and one just happened to my friend, and it's all good. It's not about that. Like, let that go. Like you said,
Yeah.
let it go. Like that's not even the point. The point is when you start doing the work, it's like, let's say we're all out of shape and we have beer bellies. And then someone's like, oh, like I got a six pack. It's like, yeah, I went to the gym like every day and did the work for a long time. Then all of a sudden I had this experience. But then when I had the experience, I realized that that wasn't even the point. It was a byproduct of just bringing me back into this magic. It's like, you came here to get this. This is extraordinary. You can think, feel, taste, touch, explore, make mistakes, choices, grow, create. It's friggin' magical. And what we're trying to do is like leave this place because it's hard and it's depressing and it's challenging and it's hurtful. And it's you like a lot of, we got depression, suicide, it's hard. So how do we connect with this higher power and this higher thing? So I just think that that's a good point. I wrote an article called the pineal gland distraction, and all these leaders I've seen them out. I have them on the podcast. Is that I don't think that really many people that I don't know anyone personally, and people will be like, oh, this person can do it, that person can do it. I don't know anybody that can just like leave their body and astral project and go around a different realm and just navigate this other existence. But even if they could, what the hell's the point? You can wake up and look at a 5-year-old kid in the awe and mystery of existence. That's great, but we're meant to be here now. We go there after. That's an after thing. Yogananda didn't sit in that realm the whole time with like Babaji. It's like a blink. And it's like, oh my God, this is so far beyond. This is also what I'm a part of. And this is extraordinary and it's incredible, but it's not like, don't think that you're any less or that you're not spiritual or you're not enlightened or you don't know what's going on, right? The spiritual master is literally just paying attention and then getting distracted and helping someone. And then just like, oh, I gotta, I was really thinking about some nonsense there. Just come back to the present moment and be here now. So that was my rant.
Yeah. I was just about to say, damn it. I had so many things to say, but I do remember two things now. One of them was like when I was younger, I've always been into things that take me inside myself. And when I was younger, I used to think that, mushrooms or drugs or, going to a Grateful Dead show or something like that was like, I was seeking that transcendent experience to get outside of myself. But the truth is, it's inside yourself and it's closing your eyes. I mean, our senses are what plug us into this 3D world. And I mean, you close your eyes and you let yourself go and go deep within. And I mean, the answers, I think, come in two ways, either a clap of thunder or a whisper. But I'd rather it come in a whisper. I'd rather get real quiet and come in a whisper than a clap of thunder, let's say like a house fire, like taking away, most of your stuff. But so yeah, I think it took me a long time to learn that I mean, obviously all of the spiritual masters tell you that the answers are within and going within, but you have to get there on your own. One of the main things I kind of write about in the book is a soul ache that I've kind of always had. And it's sort of this like unnameable, untouchable, sourceless pain that I had in my soul. And I think I've outgrown it. I felt like for a long time I was like outrunning it, and I'm like, I'm free. And then it would like, the sun had come out and I'd see the shadow and I'd be like, fuck, it's still there. But I was just wondering, like, have you had that or something like that? Have you ever had like, I don't even know how to articulate it in this moment. I mean, I wrote 400 pages about it, but like this soul ache that is, actually I know what it is, but I mean, have you ever sort of had that?
What do you phrase it? A soul what?
A soul ache. Like
a soul ache. Yeah, soul ache. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that I have it now, like when I was in like my teen, like I didn't, I pondered suicide a few times in my life, and
same.
And I think that's a common thing. I don't know what the stat is, but it's pretty high. It's very high, and suicide is up in teens, and it's because this world is dark, and like, especially if you're seeking light and goodness and community and people who make sense and look at you in the eyes and don't try to stab you, or like it's just like, are like good people who are doing good things, like where are they? It can feel lonely. So yeah, that's I think that there are times where it's more prevalent, and I feel it. And I don't know if it ever goes away. What is it for you? Well, you said, what it is. What is it for you?
Well, I mean, I think it's just it's our separation from the divine or whatever. I don't know, this woman like wrote me this, I wish I had it, but this woman who I don't know, she just wrote me a note through my website, how she loved the book, and she kind of felt that same thing. And she said she finally woke up because she realized it was her separation. Like, as a human, she was separate from this thing that she's actually from, which is spirit, consciousness, God, whatever you want to, the unified field, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, I think that was it. I don't know. I'm not sure that maybe it's taken a different form now, but it was like something so deep and painful that, like I was like, I don't know if I can last in this, in this world. Like, I'm too sensitive to the soul for all of this like pain, this hurt and stuff like that. But I think I don't, it's a lot easier to say it right now when I'm kicking it in Mexico right here, but and not in pain, but like the pain exists to show us a way and to show us the light, just as darkness exists to show us the light. Because I don't know, we probably wouldn't be that interesting of people if we hadn't suffered. I mean, I don't want to suffer. Do you hear me? Whatever's out there, like, listen, I don't want to suffer, but it is definitely, it brings about an expanded awareness, and hopefully also compassion, because that's probably something very big that's missing in our world. I mean, that's one thing that I kind of wrote about it. I understand what it is like when somebody says, my parents are dying, or like they had a stroke or something. Like, I can't do anything about it, but I can like stand in compassion with them, because I know that experience, and I can just be there for them and with them. But so, passing the mic back to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really great stuff. And I think that all people have it. I reference Greg Braden's 3 universal fears, and I believe one is not being worthy or good enough. One's not being loved, or one's fear of abandonment. I think those are the 3. I should double check, because I realized I was saying them wrong once. I was like, oh crap, I'm not doing them right. But along those things, and we all have that. And
for sure.
Everybody has it. And when I do coaching with people, and whether it's like peak performance athletes or just regular people, I think everyone's a regular person. It's just, even if you're the CEO of a company or the best athlete in the world, you're a regular person. You just have a different thing in this reality. But we deal with that no matter what we achieve financially or as far as praise and accolades go. That little soul ache is there, and it's just like this little thing. I think for me, it's like, you know, when I have it really tough, I say it's like, it's funny because the thought comes up in my mind on its own. It says, I want to go home. You know, I feel like somehow this isn't home sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
But I also think, I remember I was talking to one of my clients, and in the summer when I was with the Native American elder, I had to I was biking. I couldn't afford a car, so I had to bike. And I went there in pure faith. When I was in got to the States, you know, I bought my plane tickets. I had a big loan that's done. 28 G's is done. And then I had a credit card, right? I was at the end of the $5,000 of the credit card when I was there, from doing all this work and just basically following the pebbles. Cause I can turn around and I can make money in cars. I can make money in marketing. I could coach more. I could do all that stuff, but then I wouldn't do the podcast. I wouldn't be traveling. I wouldn't be learning. I wouldn't, you know? And so I'm fine. You know, I mean, the worst case scenario in Canada, someone will call me and ask for money and I'll just tell them if I have it or not. So really at the end of the day, it's fine. You know,
Canada.
Right? It's a bit ridiculous, but the idea is that, you know, I'm at the end of this thing of oh, how am I going to make this work to train with this elder to do this stuff? Right. And so magic, you know, at $4,800, I ended up earning $5,000 in, you know, in clients and these different things that all popped up out of nowhere within a week. And so that was a magic of the universe. But I remember there's this point where I'm biking, right? And car for me is freedom. And so all I want to do is skateboard or snowboard a few hours a day. And then I'll work the rest of the day. I got no problem with that. I'll work as long, just let me have some fun. And so I was skateboarding on the street, and I had to bike an hour to train 2 hours of martial arts with this Native American. That was part of what I learned. I actually learned martial arts with him too. Shokai, this ancient tradition that he was taught by this master. So I was training Shokai all summer too. And then I had to bike 2 hours home, and it's of course it's raining frequently when I have to get there. Right. So I'm in the rain. I'm just super, I'm pissed, man. I'm super pissed off. And I'm just oh, and I'm just sitting there, and I was and he needs help too. This guy's extraordinary and he needs help. I'm helping him every way that I can, showing up, doing all these different things. I need help. I'm doing the podcast and running myself dry. So I was just oh my God. And then, so I'm sitting there on the bike in the rain, and I'm pissed off, and I'm just what the hell is going on? Why won't you help me? You know what I mean? I don't know who I'm talking to, spirit or whatever. And then it goes, think. And I was you are the help, dummy. I was oh, right.
Wow.
So when you go to that foreign country and you help, and you come into a disaster situation and you help, when you go down the street and you help an old lady with with moving her furniture, you're not complaining about having to move the furniture and be there for the day and do all this stuff. You're willingly putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to be of service. And I think that's what we're doing. We're dealing with this angst of this reality in this world of knowing there is an opportunity to support, and it might not be easy. You might be in that uncomfort. And when that came in, I felt so much better about everything. And I was really able to be content with my situation as it was, where it was, with all the effort that I was putting in with you know, it'd be great to be supported and have a little bit of a team, and you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I still hope to bring that in. But when you realize that putting yourself willingly in that uncomfortable situation, it made me feel a little bit better. And I feel a little bit, for me, that's what life is like. There's so much challenge here. If you look at how much pain and suffering and opportunity there is to support, that's weighs on my heart. And then to realize, you know what, I have an opportunity to help, and I can, you know, impact at least a little bit. You know, I can do my part. And part of that, putting yourself in the disaster zone or in a challenging space, is going to be that uncomfort. But if you realize you're the one, you know, moving forward, and I want to talk and you can add on that, but what I wanted to talk too about Eckhart Tolle's awakening, where he talks about, I can't live with myself, and who is myself and separation. So that was an interesting concept. But then finally, to get to this last point, was I was with Adil, who is the founder of unify.org, and I was with them all weekend. They did Global Peace Day just a small team of people doing a massive amount of work, just working really hard. So I went there, tried to help out how as I could. Incredible, extraordinary people. And he talked about, I think it was like yogic philosophy, and he went up the scale. And I wish I could repeat it because he was on fire. This guy knows his stuff and is very genuine. Yeah. But the idea was like these levels of consciousness. One of them was to understand yourself as God. You get to the realization is like, oh, you are God. God's within, right? And then he goes, the next part is to love yourself, like love God with all of your heart. But when you love God with all of yourself, all of your heart, you are that thing. And so it comes right to you. And I was like, oh man, that resonates so much. And so if we can operate somehow in that understanding, I don't know, just for me, it hit home, it's like these perspectives or these principles. And then how do you do it? I have no freaking idea, but I believe the concept is really beautiful and really, really empowering. So that's my thing.
Wow, man. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I remember one thing you were saying though about following the pebbles, and that is how I try to live my life, especially since I'm trying to do this thing to share what I've learned from these people in writing. But you also said you were taking that leap of faith or something, and it's like, in my experience, when you jump, the net appears. And it is so hard to do that. I mean, I remember I wrote about it in the book, Thomas, who bears a striking resemblance to me. My sister was driving me to the airport from New Jersey to JFK. And I just was like, I started sobbing in the car. I was just like, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm like, I got a pretty good life in Seattle. I no longer have a set of house keys. I don't have a cell phone. Like, I was just like, what am I doing? But I mean, what is the alternate? The alternate is like living a very routine, monotonous life, which completely works for some people. And sometimes I really wish it would work for me. But there's that, or there's the unknown. And like Dr. Joe would say, the unknown always provides. And it's been my experience that is what happened. I mean, and sometimes it takes longer than others for the unknown to show up, but and that is a very uncomfortable state to be in. But my mother was like an incredibly loving person. Like, our house was where all of the stragglers came, and anybody who had nowhere to go for Christmas came to our house and stuff. But she was such a fearful woman. I think we inherit a lot of that stuff. And I think maybe the reason why I've done a bunch of the stuff I've done, I mean, my sister actually pointed this out to me, but it's like to swing the pendulum the other way, to combat that fear. And I mean, I started a band when I didn't really know how to play guitar. I did improv stuff. Like, my buddy and I tried to do our own travel show in which was ridiculous, in Europe. And then, I mean, I think traveling is the ultimate unknown. It's like, you have such little control over, what's happening. And, sometimes you got to get in a car with somebody and you're like, well, they could kill me and throw me in a ditch, or, but I trust in the goodness of most people. So, and then an amazing adventure unfolds from that or something. But one of the this fall, when I was getting ready to put the book out, I was freaking out so hard because it's a very honest and vulnerable book, and you're toiling away by yourself in a room for like years, right? Working on this thing. You don't know if it's any good or not. You think it might be. This is a self-published book, and I really wanted to go the traditional route because I wanted to be accepted by the gatekeepers, because it legitimizes you somehow. And I was surprised that these people that I kind of trusted and looked up to were sort of pushing me in the opposite direction, to self-publish. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. It's so much work. And I was really stuck I was stuck with that, and also just the fear and anxiety in my body. I was like, this is why artists become alcoholics and drug addicts. This is why they jump off bridges. I'm like, I need to release this. But Sonia, this girl that I'm dating, she was coming to Seattle. It was late September. She was coming on a Wednesday, and the second big earthquake happened on a Tuesday. And I was like, well, I don't know if you remember last year, there was a huge earthquake in Mexico City. But she wound up coming on a Wednesday. She left on Sunday. Monday, I wrote in my gratitude and intention journal. I'm like, and I never put a time frame on stuff, but I'm like, I need somebody to show up this week to guide me whether to go traditional publishing or, or self-publishing. And she kept saying, you just got to put this out into the world now. Like, let it unfold the way it's supposed to unfold, but you got to put this out into the world now. And so I write that I need somebody to show up on Monday. Tuesday, I get a call, or Tuesday she calls me and she's like crying because Mexico City is in chaos. Like, her life's in chaos, doesn't know if her building is structurally sound enough. And I was just like, oh, I wish I could come down and help you. And she's like, then why don't you? And I was like, well, I have so many important things to do in Seattle. I'm a very important, busy person, and joking. I had nothing going on. So I was like, all right, what the hell? And I booked a flight. Wednesday, I booked a flight to Mexico City. I was in Mexico City on Thursday. Friday, we were working at a coffee shop. And I get this email from this woman who owns a self-publishing company. And I had been put on an email string with her like 3 or 4 weeks prior. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting back to you. I was on vacation, and then there was this little earthquake. And I was like, oh, you must be vacationing in Mexico City. And she's like, no, I'm based in Mexico City. And I'm like, well, you're not going to believe this, but I'm in Mexico City right now. So we wound up, I was asking for which way to go. This self-publishing woman shows up. I'm in Mexico City, and that's kind of how I moved in that direction. But when I'm awake and I'm aware, these things show up all the time, but I get in my way so much.
That's an amazing story, man. And it goes back again to just like asking for what you need. And again, I don't think you can go like the wrong route with it. And I think if you probably have the War of Art.
It's funny you say that. My Mexican buddy just talked about this last night.
Yeah, it's short, simple, and it's basically the War of Artists. But I think it's a really good case study, and we can kind of like identify you or me or both, because when you're like talking about, legitimize the work, right? If I'm published and it goes out there and then my work is good, I think that as artists or creators or entrepreneurs or as people, it's what will they think? And if we can get to that power of just putting out the best quality that we can, and then, it's kind of like, I like it, Dr. JoeDispenza and Nassim Haramein are like, it's like good. I went to Egypt with the Resident Science Foundation last year. So I got like a whole science upgrade. I still know like the smallest amount, but had way more than I knew. But one of the concepts that really stuck with me is just like the way the universe works is you do something, then you get feedback.
Exactly.
That's it. So in art and in life, we're so nervous with being crap and it's sucking and how it's perceived and all this stuff. And then it makes us afraid not to put out rather than giving our best effort. And I think that, I don't know if you would have any advice for like writers or creatives or artists or people who want to get it out there and like how to do that. Cause you basically go through your own process and all of that is in your mind and it's self-imposed and self-inflicted. You know what I mean? Nobody, it's like you have those two little puppets from, what's that? Kindergarten. Or not kidding, that kids show, Sesame Street, and they're up there and the whole world is up there looking at you, judging you on the stage with your writing, and it sucks. And if you put your book out and you have no idea, maybe it does suck, but if we can get okay with it sucking. And Kyle Cease wrote a book, I haven't read it yet, but it says I hope I fail. I think that's the title of his book. And when you skateboard, and even Jordan Peterson has a chapter in his book, I haven't read that one either, but I've heard it's good, about don't disturb kids when they're skateboarding, because skateboarding is 99% failure. It is mostly failure.
Wow.
And someone's like, oh, you fell down. I was like, yeah, bro, I'm going to fall down like 30 more times, like while you're right here, because that is like the nature of it. But every now and then you land a trick. And it's amazing. So you get consistent on the easy ones, but you're like, you know what? I can kickflip now. I want to kickflip this 5 stairs. Or we start with 1, then you do 2, and then 3 and 4. And you'll see somebody work all mother effing day to get that trick. And they fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then boom, they get it. And that satisfaction that you get from working through it. And I think that if we can identify with failure and creation in a different way and learn to mitigate that external thing, and I'm still mitigating it. Mostly my podcast gets decent reviews, but it hasn't hit like some sort of mainstream thing where it like challenges people's beliefs. And then I get like that whole crap. So hopefully by the time that happens, I'll be like strong enough in my emotions that I'll be able to handle it. But every time it's like I get one comment is like, whatever it is, the host sucks, which is rare. I've got maybe like one of those. I was talking too much on an episode or something. And I was like, oh, yeah. But really the feedback is I don't talk that much usually. And so, but it still hurt my feelings. Right. And so that fear prevents us from creating. And I think that we should be free to create like a child's free to create art that sucks or is amazing. And they're just creating. Make sense?
I mean, I think it was like Hemingway or somebody was like, if I write one good sentence a day, it's a great day. And it's like, you just got to sit your ass in a chair and you got to do the work. I mean, that's that now that I am like writing professionally for other people, I'm just like, I set my alarm for like 3 or 4 hours and I'm like, I can screw around here or I can do the work, but I can't get out of this chair. I mean, maybe go to the bathroom once or twice, yeah. And that's pretty much what I did to get this book done. It was just like, you just got to do the work. And as you do the work, I think the work unfolds the path. And, that's why they say art is a process. You can start here and think you're going to go there, but it's like you go all these places and then all of a sudden you wind up at a totally different place. Is my audio still good? Because these things are kind of okay. Yeah. So, I mean, for anybody who's just struggling with it, just sit your ass in a chair, just do your work, whether you're painting or you're practicing your scales or you're writing a story, because it's going to unfold. And I mean, you may be doing it for an external audience, but that process is really expanding something and unfolding something within you, which I think that's, sure, accolades would be great, but I mean, I want to be joyful and in a loving state every day, because I don't know, being miserable is it's not very fun. I've spent a lot of my life in that state. So I can tell you, it's not very fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And, I agree with that. And I've been with the clients that I've had recently, it's like having the idea of being able to create the book or the business or whatever you have in a state of bliss, if it's possible. I know it's not always easy to execute, but it is actually a possibility to go through the most stressful thing. One of my buddies, Tyler Fort, I'll say, well, shout out buddy, he's one of my childhood friends. He I get stressed out about stupid stuff, I like to be efficient. So when I'm not efficient, I get stressed out. And so, I'll forget this thing and I'll go back and I'll, in my mind, I'm making a deal about it and I have to come back. But my buddy Tyler, he'll, no matter what happens to throw him off, he just goes like, oh yeah, I lost the headphones on you. He just goes, oh, he's like, no, no problem. He'll be like driving to the border with his family. And then he'll just right at the last second, he'll forget the passport and it'll be like a 6-hour drive. Be like, whoop, forgot the passport. Guess we're going back. And I've never seen him really maybe one time get stressed, but no matter what it is, he just kind of laughs and it's fine. Yeah. For me, if it's not efficient, I'll mess it up. So as we go through these serious things, if we can somehow make it an enjoyable experience, that is a possibility. We don't have to stress the whole thing. There's gonna be stressful moments, but we probably overdo it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to move into my next books to not beat the hell out of myself as I do it. I mean, I do know now that I know how they connect. I know the titles of them and everything. I know it's not going to be an easy process, but it's not my first time. So I know kind of what to expect. And I know that if I have a bad day of writing, that happens sometimes. And, maybe I didn't get shit done, or maybe I wrote a paragraph that I'm happy with, but you just got to wake up and do. It's just like life, you just got to wake up and do it. Just do it the next day, and hope that you do it better, and find a way to shut out those internal voices that are like, you suck, this is never going to happen. The devil's on your shoulders. So
yeah, it's really good feedback. And it's good for you to say, like, right now, like, if someone's observing you, is like, okay, he's a successful author, he's right. We can't mention the names, but writing for other people that are very well known. Your book is well received. It's a great book. And still, it's just like they're still there, and it's you are coming from something informing you that you suck. And like, where does this baloney come from? So don't think that you're the only one. Somehow, if you're a human being, there's going to be a part of your consciousness from wherever it came from, who knows, is going to tell you suck. Don't worry. Don't listen to him. You don't suck. Everybody sucks. We're just learning. We're growing. Let people, if you can be, I heard once that enlightenment is like if somebody gives you a compliment or insult, you remain the same. And that would be a great space to get to. That's all I want to say about that.
Daily practice. That's what it
Daily
all comes
practice.
down. Yeah. I don't know. I was good. No, nothing. Forget it. I don't know why I was going to say this, but the opening line of my book, which you don't actually know, is that, there's like an opening quote.
Yeah.
You don't actually know it's the character quoting himself, and that will be revealed somewhere down the road. But it's spirit brought me into the world, the body carried me through the world, and the mind sent me in search of the world. And that's how I kind of understand life now. Like, spirit is the builder, it's everything. The body is the physical vessel that carries us through this 3D, 4D experience. And the curiosity of the mind is, well, it's a wild beast that must be tamed. But I think that is the key. That is the key. One of the keys to life is getting the mind in control, because if it's out of control, I was thinking the other day, I was like, when I was younger, I was like, Sid Barrett or something, like, I would lose my mind for my art or something like that. And, having come close to losing it a couple times, I'm like, well, no, man. I'm like, I want to be in control of this body and this mind. So
that's awesome. I love it. That young enthusiasm.
That's why they say youth wasted on the youth,
Yeah, totally. Man, well, this has been a very beautiful conversation. It's been an honor to chat with you and go deep and just have a real and honest reflection. And I think that your work and your stuff is just beginning. So I just want to thank you for coming on. And also, just so you know, the last question is there anything that you wish that we chatted about? Is there anything that you wish that I had asked you? And feel free to elaborate as long as you wish, if you can think of something.
I can't really offhand. I mean, I can't wait to listen to this again, because we covered so much material, and I got a bunch of stuff that you taught me that I want to pull into my life. So thank you for this amazing conversation. It was really fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you too. Well, I think this is the beginning of a friendship. I like the way you think and the way that you're exploring and what you're putting out in the world. And, it's really good stuff, and you're always welcome to come back. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? You can leave them with some sort of words of wisdom to summarize your travels if you wish, and also just how to get a hold of you and look at your book.
Well, I think all of the answers that we're seeking are already within inside of ourselves. We just have to have the courage to look in there, which is a kind of a scary thing to do sometimes. I would say start a gratitude intention journal, which is just write down 5 things you're grateful for every day and 5 things you want to create. And I had one other, I can't think of it right now, but who knows? Maybe we'll be snowboarding in Whistler one of these days. You never know. But
could be, man.
Know. Yeah. Love yourself, do kind acts, and create your life.
I agree. I agree with all that, my friend. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you. I'm sure that this is the beginning of our conversation. We'll talk more on a chairlift and whistler ideally this winter. But thank you for coming on, and thank you for your work, man. It's nice to meet you.
You as well. Take care.
See ya. See everybody.